remedies that were used for diseases. Most of these herbal remedies that you see in the herb books come from the 14th and 15th century. They're not really up to speed for what's going on today. In other words, they're treating illnesses in the 14th and 13th and those centuries and not up to treating the illnesses that are manifested today in the 21st century. Diseases that are caused by computers, radiation, polluted air, polluted water, the bioengineering of the seeds and the foods, which are genetically altered by splicing human cells with animal cells. And these kind of biogenetic foods cause diseases, and of course these herbs are not geared toward that, so we have to reformulate them a lot of times to get back to what we need to do. So as I give you these remedies, I'm going to reformulate them and try to bring them up to speed for the illnesses that are manifested today. Keep in mind that we're looking at expressions of diseases. The body always tries to cleanse itself through the nasal passages, the skin, the scalp, the pores generally. Usually it tries to do it through the kidneys and the liver, and of course the bowel movements. Those are cleansing apparatuses that the body uses. So whenever the body has a disease, it still has these outlets to take care of the disease condition. The pores, the skin, the bowels, the urine, the liver, those are still the instruments that the body has to rely on. No matter what causes the disease, it still has those outlets to purify itself. And I'm not saying dis-ease in that traditional sense. I'm saying the body is not at ease with itself. It's dis-ease with itself, and it's trying to get to a condition of at ease. So let's go down some general ones here. Say, for instance, alcohol abuse. As you can see, we have the herb milk thistle, which is purifying the liver. And the liver is the one responsible for all toxins that go into the body. So the liver is burdened by alcohol, vinegar, all drugs go to the liver, and the liver is trying to detox the system. We have this herb here called kudzu, which is used for alcohol addiction. So you combine kudzu with milk thistle. If the person had addiction to sugar, we would go with milk thistle and bilberry. If a person had addiction to tobacco, we would use milk thistle and chickweed. Usually we use chickweed in combination with the milk thistle all the time because chickweed helps control cravings. So we would use chickweed, milk thistle, and kudzu for alcohol addiction or abuse. We would use chickweed, milk thistle, and bilberry for sugar addiction, you see? So we're always using this chickweed to control the appetite. If someone had like eating disorder, we would still use the chickweed, we use the milk thistle, we use the bilberry as well. Now for anxiety, which is a stressful kind of condition, we use valerian. That's very strong. Some people don't like the taste, so we use passion flower, kava kava, chamomile, and catnip. Arthritis, we use devil's claw to cleanse the waste out of the joints, and boswellia for pain. Sometimes we use white willow for pain as well. And of course we use the oil of evening primrose, which has gamma-lanic acid in it, which helps the blood be slippery. The devil's claw, yucca, popularly used for arthritis. The inflammation is another issue. Inflammation would be cat's claw or feverfew. So inflammation is denoted by that I-T-I-S ending on arthritis. So that's inflammation. So we would always use cat's claw or feverfew, some anti-inflammatory. So we would use cat's claws, devil's claw, and boswellia or white willow for pain. Blood pressure, we use the herb garlic and hawthorn berries. That's good for the pressures. The solar in tablets today, and it's usually odorless garlic. Cholesterol, we use garlic again, and glucolipid, which is not very popular. We use mostly garlic for the cholesterol condition, which is created by stress, or the body's attempt to get rid of waste will create cholesterol high conditions. Circulation, poor circulation, we use ginkgo or gotu kola, garlic, cayenne, and hawthorn berries. Hawthorn berries primarily used to treat the heart. Helps to increase the ability of the heart to pump better. It keeps the heart's rhythm steady. So for fibrillations and murmurs, conditions deal with the heart, we use hawthorn berries. So you combine all three of these, mind you, for the poor circulation. Colds and flus, basically a name for mucus congestion, mucus waste in the lungs and in the tissue. We use echinacea, which is good for purifying the body. It's good for the white blood cells. We use astragalus, which is also good for energy. Garlic, which is a blood thinner and antibiotic kind of action, and golden seal root. These are quite popular. Golden seal and echinacea are usually found combined together in the stores. Constipation, we use this Cape aloe. They use an aloe there, which is laxative, and Cascara sagrada, which spares your potassium so you won't get a potassium loss. That's why people like to use Cascara sagrada. But sometimes the taste is a little offensive, so senna is used. Senna is a good laxative. Psyllium is a bulking agent. It's not really a laxative at all. These three are the laxative: aloe, Cascara sagrada, and senna. Of course, rhubarb is the other laxative. Coughs, using licorice, wild cherry bark, which is good for gouty arthritis too, by the way, and thyme, which is basically for the nerves and the kind of unpleasant condition. It's not for the mucus per se. Colt's foot, horehound, pleurisy, elecampane, mullein would be good for the mucus congestion. These are mostly trying to thin the mucus and get it out and relieve the pain of the condition. We use thyme. Depression, very popular today, St. John's wort, along with valerian. I mentioned before, valerian may make you a little groggy, so you may want to use catnip or chamomile instead. So you combine St. John's wort with catnip or chamomile in equal parts. To detoxification of the body, we use milk thistle, but that detoxifies the liver. Mind you, most of the waste is going through the kidney, so you probably have to use cuby berries or juniper berries in conjunction with the milk thistle, and bilberry in conjunction with the milk thistle to detoxify the pancreas and spleen. Digestion, if it's poor, you want to stimulate the appetite, use chamomile, peppermint, ginger. A lot of people get a supplement called nutritional brewer sheets because it has B1 and B2, which also can cause you to want to eat more. Fatigue, use Panax ginseng, or we use the Siberian ginseng. A lot of people use the ginseng with Damiana for fatigue or fatigue. Hemorrhoids, which is basically a form of varicose veins of the anus. We use horse chestnuts and witch hazel. Witch hazel basically is applied topically. It's astringent, trying to shrink it with the witch hazel. You could use another herb as well. Some people like to use comfrey in combination with the witch hazel. Insomnia, which is usually the first sign of a disease, is that your sleep gets in a disordered fashion. We use valerian, passion flower, hops, lemon balm, catnip, chamomile, as I mentioned before. Liver, again, you see the milk thistle, but dandelion root is good for the liver as well. Memory loss, we use gotu kola as well as ginkgo. Migraine headaches, I would say feverfew is probably about the best for migraine headaches. Migraine headaches are a type of headache. It's not a severe headache, it's just a name of a specific type. Menstrual irregularities and PMS, we use dun quoit, chaste tree berries, oil of evening primrose. Some people use red raspberry. Some people use squavine and blessed thistle as well. Nausea, that's indigestion. Ginger is good for that. Peppermint, especially good with children. And chamomile, which helps calm down the digestive system. Prostate, enlargement, benign. We use saw palmetto along with pygeum. Those are the most popular two. And they come in combinations in tablets and in liquids, saw palmetto and pygeum. Stinging nettle is primarily used for growing the hair as well. But in this case, I would lean toward the saw palmetto and pygeum for the prostate difficulties of any kind. Skin conditioning, we use marigold, which is called Calinda. We use chamomile topically on the skin and tea tree oil topically on the skin. Some people use aloe vera oil. Stress and tension, again we have the valerian, which is a calmative, a sedative, passion flower, the kava kava, and the ginseng. Ulcers, licorice, aloe vera juice is good for that. Comfrey is also good for ulcers as well. Urinary tract infections, some people using grapeseed oil tablets, cranberry, yuba ursi, cranberry juice in specific is used for that, yuba ursi as well. Varicose veins, that's waste in the veins. You can use horsetail for that, along with horse chestnut, bilberry, witch hazel topically, which means that they're using it for astringent to shrink the varicose veins. Water retention or bloating, as it's sometimes called, we're using a diuretic called yuba ursi, but you can also use kubi and buchu and juniper berries, and of course dandelion leaf is good for water retention. Now we are using these herbs, and I just want you to see what these herbs look like before I go over the rest of the remedies with you. Say if you have chills, for instance, we use cayenne pepper. Some people don't like that burning sensation, so we use bayberry bark tea with a pinch of cayenne to get away from that burning sensation. The cayenne is going to speed up the circulation. The person gets chills because they're throwing off a lot of heat, and then they get cold, and the pores shut down, and then they feel too hot. So we have the myrrh, we have the peppermint, white willow is for pain mostly. Peach leaves are used for urinary tract infections, also used for diabetes. Sage is the one that's popularly used, the ones that have underlines. Sage and catnip is used, along with cayenne, the popular ones to use for chills. Cholera, of course, these are some of the older names for diseases. We don't use those names too much today. That's basically indigestion. We have cholera, and we have more mucus cholera. This is indigestion with diarrhea, and when you get into cholera, more bust, that's when you have griping, a kind of pulling sensation in your stomach. But basically, cholera is indigestion. So we use the Bistort. Some people just drink ginger for indigestion, and diarrhea, and vomiting. We can use the wild yam. Now, wild alum is a very it's astringent. It will stop the diarrhea. That's why that's here, to stop the diarrhea altogether. Now, sometimes when you don't have those herbs together, you can use water peppermint, or some people sprinkle a little black pepper into some tea and drink it for the cholera. Red clover is very good for that. Fleabane is good for, of course, parasites as well. But most of the time for this indigestion, people use, understand that you're having the diarrhea because the body's trying to throw out the waste. So it's trying to throw out the waste because you're constipated. So cholera and dysentery, those are forms of constipation. And the body's trying to cleanse itself because it can't take in any more food. Now this is the indigestion of diarrhea with griping. So then we go to the peach leaves, which I mentioned before, sometimes used for diabetes and used for urinary tract infection, along with the Bistort, queen of the meadow, raspberry leaves. That's red raspberry leaves, good for cholera. Now we're into a calmative such as peppermint, good for the nervous system, good for digestion. It's a useful herb for cholera. Rhubarb is a laxative, so we're trying to cleanse the system out again. And some people use the charcoal because it absorbs the toxins that are causing the diarrhea and the cholera. So we use the pulverized charcoal, which you buy in the store. You don't really make that yourself. Now we get into childbirth to make it easy. We have these female herbs, the black cohosh and the blue cohosh. Brings on labor pains when time. It helps bring on the labor pains and bring on the labor. Shepherd's purse, which is a good astringent, by the way, is used for childbirth. And spikenard is taken sometime before to shorten the ordeal of the birthing process. Spikenard is used for cancer too. Squavine has hormones in it the ladies need, estrogen, taken before childbirth to ease the ordeal of it all. Red raspberry is the most popular herb used for childbirth, and I would just recommend it to just take the raspberry throughout the pregnancy. Constipation, we're back to those laxatives now. We have the Cascara sagrada, remember I mentioned that before, which helps in the rhubarb, which is also a laxative. Constipation is just you're not drinking enough water or eating enough bulk, so we go back to the buckthorn bark, the chickweed, which is good for skin diseases as well, because you're going to have disease of the skin of the digestive tract when you're constipated. And ginger is good for griping and digestion because it stimulates the liver to produce bile, which helps break down the waste. And wild Oregon grape, which is good for the liver as well. And of course the rhubarb and the butternut. Now we're into diabetes mellitus. Diabetes mellitus is a disease brought on by the diet. It's primarily caused by white sugar and secondarily caused by bleached white flour, and it can be caused by eating a lot of meat as well. We have the herbs that are popularly used for diabetes is golden seal, which makes a precursor called inulin, which turns into insulin. So we use the golden seal, and the other herb is bilberry, which is sometimes called blueberry leaves. We use the bilberry. Blue raspberry leaves, which is called bilberry. Some people get them confused there. But the herbs used for diabetes is primarily the blue raspberry leaves, or bilberry, or huckleberry sometimes called, and the golden seal. Now the other herbs that you see here, the uverse is a diuretic, and it's astringent here to relieve the pain of digestion and the stress that's put on your digestive system. Yarrow is good for stimulating the liver, which helps break down the food and can relieve the stress of the pancreas, because the pancreas being stressed, it gets weak and gets a disease that we call diabetes. But I wouldn't go into the rest of the herbs. The saw palmetto is good for the fallopian tubes and the prostrate, but primarily it's the bilberry first and the golden seal second. Now we move on to dysentery, which is an old name for diarrhea. And sometimes you want to shut it down altogether, but most of the time we're trying to get the waste out of the system, out of the skin. And we use mullein, the beetroot, the barberry bark, the birch, the bistort, the comfrey. Comfrey popularly is one of the most popular ones used for dysentery. Again, we can go to the laxatives such as rhubarb, and we can go to the skunk cabbage, which is good for colds and flus and the respiratory tract. And we could try to settle the stomach with the peppermint tea, which is good for that. And then you have the witch hazel, which is astringent to slow down the fast-moving action of the colon. So we use these astringents such as witch hazel and shepherd's purse. We only have the purse there. But ginger is good for the digestive tract. So I would say the ginger, and if you want to clean out the digestive tract, then you go to the rhubarb and maybe some skunk cabbage. Dizziness, we use peppermint to primarily feed the nervous system, and of course catnip to calm the person's dizzy spell. Dandruff, a lot of times that's caused by chemicals today. We use nettle, that's the most popular one for dandruff, nettle and sage. Burdock would come in third. You would mix these in equal parts, by the way. Some people rinse their hair with nettle and sage. Just leave it in. For deafness, we're dealing with maybe congestion in the ear. Sometimes we use garlic oil to get that congestion out, wintergreen oil, or oil of sassafras, or oil of hemlock, or oil of myrrh, or tincture of myrrh, or tincture lobelia, which you put directly in the ear. To drink, you use chickweed, oregano, which is a seasoning, and marjoram, which is a seasoning. You would drink those for deafness. Now we have the old term dropsy, which you would call edema today. That's water retention or swelling. We use the wood betony, the hemlock, the buchu, which is a diuretic again, the juniper berries, which is a diuretic again. So we're trying to get the person to urinate out this water retention with these herbs. But sometimes the water retention causes waste to accumulate in the system, in the tissue. In that case, we use black cohosh and blue cohosh. And we use celery and cleavers, which is good for colds and flus. We use that to get rid of the waste that's in the tissue that's causing the tissue to need this water to dissolve it. We use the dandelion, the elder, the hydrangea, which helps get rid of that water retention. Indian hemp, which opens up the pores and lets it come out. Milkweed, mullein is again used for colds, flus, and skin disease, and helps get rid of that waste in the tissue, which is causing the water to be retained. Nettle is good for opening the pores and cleansing the tissue, stop the water from coming. Oregano, parsley is a diuretic. Then we're back at the skunk cabbage for the tissue, skin, and colds. The spearmint, which helps relieve the digestive tract. The stress on it helps get rid of that waste in the system. The tansy, which is used for abortions, is astringent as well and helps to expectorate waste. And then we have the white ash and the white willow part. And the hyssop, of course, is a diet that what we call it helps open up the pores to help the waste come out. And the chamomile and the marjoram, which is commonly called the seasoning, the pennyroyal, and the dwarf elder. Diarrhea, of course, is another form of constipation. And again, we're trying to slow it down. If you're trying to slow it down, you use astringents like comfrey. You're trying to relieve the digestive tract of the stress that's causing the diarrhea to occur. We use the peppermint, the mullein again, the nettle, marshmallow. We use popular. We use the red raspberry. Rhubarb is a laxative to help flush that waste out. St. John's wort, which helps calm the stress that's caused by this condition. And slip around, which is good for keeping the colon cleansed anyway. You can take about 2 tablespoons of slip around powder a day and some water or juice to help keep your colon cleansed. And that would be a preventive to stop this diarrhea. And yarrow, which helps cleanse the digestive tract, it works on the liver. Wormwood gets rid of parasites of all types. And you're going to have parasites when you have constipation and diarrhea, by the way. And ginger, which is good for stimulating the liver to break down the waste, to get rid of the condition that's causing the diarrhea. And rock rose, hemlock, and cinnamon is also good. You can get that out of your kitchen to help relieve this diarrhea. Shepherd's purse, again, is astringent to slow down the process. because we're having the fast expulsion of food, which means you're losing a lot of electrolytes and you're going to be drained of potassium. And again, we use the charcoal or the clay to help absorb the toxins. But 1 heaping teaspoon every 2 hours would do at the most of these with the charcoal. Diphtheria, we're looking at a very, very severe kind of cold condition again. We use golden seal, Indian hemp, to open up the pores so that the mucus come out. Myrrh, because it has antiseptic quality. Echinacea is good for colds, flus, and it's an antiviral kind of herb. Lemon juice is good. It helps alkaline the system, which helps bring in the curative process as alkaline, and it reduces energy. Red sage, of course, is astringent. It's good for colds. And eucalyptus is good as well. It opens up the pores to help get rid of this waste. Capsicum or red cayenne pepper, of course, thins the blood and helps speed up the curative process. You can make a gargle of the cayenne as well as the ginger for this disorder as well, maybe with a little bit of lobelia, but not too much of lobelia because it can cause nausea and vomiting. Dyspepsia essentially means, dys means not functioning, like you have a dysfunctional system. It means it's not. Pepsia, digestion not. You don't have good digestion again. We use the beech, the buck bean, the calamus, the cayenne, the columbo, the gentian root. Golden seal would be probably the easiest to get for dyspepsia or indigestion. Horehound is good for that. Peach leaves, quassia is good for parasites and worms as well, and it's good for addictions. Quassia is named after African man. Sage is astringent. Spearmint is good for flus and colds and helps feed the nervous system. And tansy is good for getting rid of mucus. And thyme is used mostly for headaches and nervous stress there. Again, the wild cherry is good for the pancreas. It's good for gouty arthritis. Wild cherry juice. Yarrow is good for the liver and helps digestion. Valome and bloodroot and chamomile. Peruvian bark is good as well. It's also good for parasites and worms as well. Ginger, good for digestion. So if you have indigestion, I guess the easiest one to get would be the ginger and the cayenne if you wanted to make a tea, or the thyme and oregano if you wanted to make a tea right from the kitchen. Golden seal is always good to have around. So you could use these things right out of the kitchen. The cayenne, the sage, the thyme, the oregano, and maybe with a little pinch of spearmint to make it taste good. But you can get these right out of the kitchen. The ginger, the oregano, the thyme, the cayenne, the sage, and that will relieve the dyspepsia or indigestion. Delirium and delirium tremors, that's basically a nervous condition. We're trying to feed the nerves with motherwort, vervain, whoopitoni to give you stable energy, mistletoe, which is basically a parasite type of plant that feeds off of waste, and antiemetics. Emetics is when you're vomiting, you're emitting something from your mouth, and antiemetic stops you from vomiting. So we have the bayberry bark, the buck bean, the lobelia in large doses. And small doses will stop the spasmodic vomiting. You don't want to use much of it. If you use a lot, it's going to make you vomit, especially lobelia. You use a little bit, it stops the vomiting. And the mustard, marica, and peach leaves, that stops the vomiting. That's mustard, what you call mustard. You use it as a seasoning. I'm talking about mustard seeds made into a tea. Originally, they used the mustard when they ate raw meat because it had pus and mucus in it and caused you to vomit, so we put the mustard on the meat to stop that kind of action. Peppermint is good as an antiemetic, stop vomiting, and Solomon seal is good to stop vomiting, and spearmint, all the mints are good, peppermint, spearmint. White willow is primarily used for the discomfort of vomiting. And of course the earache, we have the hops, oregano, the pimpernel, the lemon juice. Those are some of the remedies for some popular type of diseases. We're going to look at some more so you can get a better idea of how to treat these diseases. I'm just going over them with you. Now for blood poisoning, we use the chickweed, which is good for measles, it's good for suppressing your appetite. Plant. The fuzzy looking leaves are mullein. The flat leaves without the fuzz is plantain. We have the chickweed, which has little yellow flowers and grows around. But nonetheless, this is chickweed, plantain, echinacea, and golden seal. For blood poison, the popular two would be golden seal and echinacea, which are sold together in tablets and in teas and in tinctures. It's a popular combination. Myrrh is antiseptic again. Burdock is good as a blood cleanser. Bloodroot is a good blood cleanser, but mostly I would say the echinacea and golden seal. Now burns, which is caused by a traumatization from heat, use bittersweet burdock again, calamus, chickweed. Chickweed's good for skin diseases of all types, measles, mumps and all that sort of thing. Mumps is a glandular disease, I'm sorry. But chickweed is popular for all types of disease. Of course, it suppresses the appetite as well. Now we have elder, poplar, and onions, bruised onions. Old remedies, they would have you heat up the onions in the oil and then apply it to the area, but you don't have to do that anymore. You can use onion powder now with clay applied to the burns. Comfrey is good. Comfrey powder mixed with clay or mixed with the onion powder applied to the burn is popular. Some people just, when they burn their finger, they just put it in some cold water real quick. That keeps the water cold by changing it, adding more ice to it. That kind of like helps the blood to coagulate. That's why they're doing it. Bronchitis, which we got the TIS, which means inflammation of the bronchial, inflammation of the lungs. So we're back to using something for the skin. The colt's foot is good for the mucus congestion. The chickweed is good for the skin. The cuby berries is a diuretic, helps get rid of that mucus congestion, which may be irritating the lungs. The golden seal again has all around purpose for any sort of disease, as you can see was mixed in the other chart. The lungwort, the mullein is good for colds. The myrrh is antiseptic. The white pine is good for colds. Pleurisy is good for colds. But the ones up here for colds will be colt's foot, mullein, pleurisy, and let me see, they list elecampane. Those are the ones specific for colds of all types, bronchial colds, bronchitis, pneumonia, the elecampane, pleurisy, you see, the mullein, the colt's foot, and horehound, which is listed here. Skunk cabbage is good for colds. Slippery elms helps get rid of the waste and pass it out the system. And some people like to use white pod lily. Virginia helps get rid of the mucus congestion that may be causing inflammation. And beverage teas, these are just some of the teas people just like to drink. The red clover blossom, sage, all the mints, sassafras, strawberry leaves, as I mentioned, all the mints, peppermint, spearmint, fennel, which some people are mistaken for licorice, red raspberry leaves. Hyssop is a good tea, good for high blood pressure as well. Chickweed's good for appetite suppressing the skin. Catnip is a very good calmative. Wintergreen is good for the nerves as well. And sarsaparilla is good for the progesterone, testosterone level in men, helps raise the sperm count, but it's good for ladies as well who are having some kind of estrogen imbalance. White cherry bark is good for gouty arthritis, and the black cherry juice is good for gouty arthritis as well. But these are some of the beverage tea. Chamomile is popular, hops is popular, juniper berries is made into jellies in Europe. It's a good tasting herb, but it is, which I mentioned, is basically social and political today, which is only a cleansing process of the body. We use blue violet because it's an antiseptic, and we used to paint that on horses and people who got cuts years ago. With rock rose and red clover blossoms, we use chickweed, cleavers, again used for colds, coral red clover, blood purifier. We have the burdock, which is a blood purifier, the yellow dock, another blood purifier, dandelion root. So we're just putting together some blood purifiers here for this cancer. We're going to put together the red clover, the dandelion root, the burdock root, maybe some golden seal root. And we put all this together. That would be a popular combination for cancer. Of course, we can use the rock rose, the slippery elm, which acts on the digestive tract, the sorrel, which is good for warts and tumors and skin diseases. Sorrel is good for that, as well as thuja and sanicle. We have the wood sage, the yellow docks. The docks are always good for blood, purifying the blood to help work on the liver. And the poplar, the golden seal, and the poke, and the comfrey and blue flag. Now we're getting into cramps, which is lactic acid waste in the muscles, or it can be caused by varicose veins. I don't know which. But again, the muscles are not getting enough oxygen, so they're contracting. Blue cohosh is good for that. And if you're having cramp in the stomach, cayenne or ginger would help that. But you can actually get a herb called cramp bark, which will be ideal for this situation. Instead of using all these, just get cramp bark. Groups is just another type of cold. We're back to those cold remedies again. I mentioned before, mullein, chickweed, colt's foot, horehound, pleurisy, elecampane. Those are good for colds, but you're having these spasms here, so you have to use another combination. Something to relieve the spasms: catnip, chamomile. Corns and calluses, we use bittersweet, chamomile combined into an ointment. You can get the ointment already made today. Some people use digestive enzymes combined with garlic, that sort of thing, for the corns and calluses to soften the skin, especially if on the feet. You soak your skin in ginger root tea. Coughs, you use blue violet, comfrey, colt's foot, ginger, horehound, hyssop, lungwort, myrrh, oregano, white pine, white pepper. We're just trying to relieve the spasms that's causing the cough here with these herbs. So primarily you probably use the comfrey and the colt's foot, or the comfrey with some myrrh, or the comfrey and some hyssop, or the comfrey and some horehound. But any one of these herbs are good for that. Some people even just chew on some licorice or some ginger root to relieve this coughing because it irritates your throat. So we use the horehound, which is kind of bitter, by the way. Hyssop, lungwort, myrrh, oregano, all those. Chest trouble, that's just a generalized kind of symptom. It's not a sign. It's just a generalized symptom. I don't know what's causing chest trouble. So we were saying ginseng to give you more energy, hops to relax the chest, hyssop to open up the tissue so it can excrete the waste, myrrh is antiseptic, the pimpernel, white pine, the sassafras, the Solomon seal. Again, I don't know what's causing the chest trouble, so this is like a shotgun remedy, including some astringents, some things to expectorate, some things to open up the pores, elecampane, some things to close the pores. It's a shotgun form, as we call it. Convulsions, we're into nerve disorders, so we're going to use those kind of herbs that are sedatives and calmatives, primarily the catnip, the skullcap, the valerian, the skunk cabbage, all of those good kind of sedatives to help relieve these convulsions. Peppermint is always good for the nervous system. Catarrh is another word for mucus congestion. So we're back to the same respiratory type herbs I mentioned before, the mullein, the colt's foot, the horehound, that's the colt's foot, the horehound, the comfrey is good for catarrh, as well as the, I think I've already mentioned most of the ones, the mullein, the pleuroseed, elecampane, so I think you may be kind of familiar with that by now. Sanicle is good for skin diseases of all sorts, so is thuja, and we're using the skunk cabbage for respiratory and to expectorate the mucus, and sarsaparilla that works on the mucosal membrane tissue, and bloodroot, which kind of shuts down, closes the pores to help them to excrete the waste, and comfrey, which has astringent effect. Bucha is a diuretic to help you just excrete the waste. Now you have poor circulation, pale fingernails, your feet get cold easy, your hands get cold, circulation's poor, you're causing dandruff and all that sort of thing. So you want to increase the circulation, use cayenne, golden seal, hyssop, witch hazel, holy thistle, or you can combine these things. Most of the time we use the red clover and the cayenne and the golden seal actually, or a little hyssop. Now we're back to this indigestion again. This time it's cholera for infants. We call it infantum. So we're back to treating the digestive problems, which can be caused by the milk. It can cause indigestion to occur. So we're trying to relieve that indigestion. In a child, usually the mints are better. The red raspberry leaves are good. And if you have to do an enema, then you're going to use the red raspberry and the bayberry bark internally. You don't want to use anything that's going to irritate the child's system. So the yarrow flowers are mild tasting, but the yarrow root is bitter. So you may want to use yarrow flowers with some wild cherry bark for its flavor in red raspberry. But generally red raspberry and peppermint or catnip are the best combinations for any kind of infant kind of disorders. We've gone over the colds or mucus congestion or catarrh, as it's sometimes called, and we're back to those same kind of respiratory herbs. As we mentioned before, Indian hip helps open up the pores, it's a diaphoretic, and we back to the yarrow, which is good, along with the bayberry. Catnip helps calm the condition. Sage is astringent. Peppermint helps to relieve the congestion of the mucosal membrane. Indian hip opens the pores. Nettle is good for the skin. Pleuroseed and specific C helps get rid of that mucus. Pleuroseed, elecampane, colt's foot, horehound, mullein, chickweed, those kind of respiratory herbs. Basically, it's a shotgun formula. If you look at it, you don't know what to do, because you have these relaxants here to help relax the lungs so they can get rid of the waste. Then you have astringent to close down the pores and eject the waste. So you got two seesaw kind of combinations there. so sometimes it's difficult to make a good choice. Ginger is good for water retention, it's good for colds, it's good for relieving irritation in the throat, and golden seal, as I mentioned before, is a good all-around herb to just keep at all times in your house. Sarsaparilla, good for the mucosal membrane tissue. Saw palmetto, good for the prostate and the fallopian tubes and mucosal tissue in general. And when you have colds, it involves mucosal tissue of the lungs or nasal passage and nasal cavity. Colic, well, that's indigestion again, and therefore you're going to go to the kitchen and you'll find all those things for indigestion, the digestive type herbs in your kitchen, the caraway seeds, the dill, the fennel, the oregano, the peppermint, the spearmint, the savory. Most of the herbs you use for seasoning are good for digestion. So generally, just go to the seasonings and use those. And colon trouble, basically, I don't know what's causing the trouble. That's when you look at these forms, you see colon trouble. Well, what's causing it? I don't know. So in this case, you underline the peppermint because it helps open up the pores, expect your weights. Then you have the aloes, which is a laxative, help you get rid of the waste. And then we have slip around, which is not a laxative, which helps slip the waste out of the colon. And white oak bark, which is an astringent kind of quality, and golden seal. Problem is that most of the time people use the wrong food combinations, and they may be stressed, and these things can cause the colon trouble. Consumption disease, just another name for colds. The lungs, the tubercles, tuberculosis. We have the colt's foot again, the skunk cabbage, the comfrey, the horehound, the elecampane. I mentioned the pleurisy before. That's just another type of cold. So we're trying to use the herbs and trying to decipher why they put these combinations when you look in these herb books, so you won't get all that confused. Yeah, so let's look at some more herbal remedies. Hydrophobia is mostly, hydro means water, phobia means fear, so that's fear of water. That's some kind of a nervous kind of condition, basically an old term for it. So they're using lobelia to settle the nerves and skull cap for the nerves. So they're basically using things for the nerves here. Hiccups is, again, the digestive problem, trying to alkaline your system. Since it's just too acid, and it goes into the hiccup kind of state. So we use a blue cohosh, the dill, the Indian hemp, and the orange juice. Sometimes lemon, raw lemon squeeze and ginger and gargle will relieve the condition of chewing on a licorice stick or something of that nature. For hair, to stimulate the growth, the Indian hemp. Nettle is the most popular herb used for the hair, by the way. Rosemary prevents hair from falling out, so you would use nettle and rosemary. Rosemary increases the blood to the skull, blood perfusion to the brain as well. Then we have sage and peach and burdock, but I would say the nettle. Yeah, so let's look at some more herbal remedies. Hydrophobia is mostly, hydro means water, phobia means fear, so that's fear of water. That's some kind of a nervous kind of condition, basically an old term for it. So they're using lobelia to settle the nerves and skull cap for the nerves. So they're basically using things for the nerves here. Hiccups is, again, the digestive problem, trying to alkaline your system. Since it's just too acid, and it goes into the hiccup kind of state. So we use a blue cohosh, the dill, the Indian hemp, and the orange juice. Sometimes lemon, raw lemon squeeze and ginger and gargle will relieve the condition of chewing on a licorice stick or something of that nature. For hair, to stimulate the growth, the Indian hemp. Nettle is the most popular herb used for the hair, by the way. Rosemary prevents hair from falling out, so you would use nettle and rosemary. Rosemary increases the blood to the skull, blood perfusion to the brain as well. Then we have sage and peach and burdock, but I would say the nettle and rosemary would be probably the most popular combination. For gray hair, you would use sage rinse. Hay fever, again, we're back to this mucus congestion. We're using the mullein, the colt's foot, and of course the skunk cabbage is good for the lungs. Heartburn, which is again indigestion, it's food fermenting. It causes, when it ferments, it makes gas. So we're back to the digestive type herbs that you find in your kitchen, the oregano, the fennel, the marjoram, all of those kind of herbs you find right in your kitchen for the indigestion. Now for the heart itself, that's another issue. Maybe your heart is not beating correctly, maybe you have murmurs, maybe you have fibrillation. For the heart, the herb for that is hawthorn berries. Hawthorn berries, that's the one you use for all these conditions involving the heart. But if you want to get real specific, you can use some angelica with hawthorn berries for the palpitations in the heart. For borage to strengthen the heart, so you use hawthorn berries with borage to strengthen your heart. To stimulate your heart, you use cayenne and hawthorn berries, but always using the hawthorn berries in conjunction with these remedies. Hemorrhoids is varicose veins of the anus. Some people may try to shrink them with the shepherd's purse and with the white oak bark applied directly to the area, made into poultices. Some people, to relieve the condition, would have to use some slippery elm powder mixed in water or juice to help relieve the stress on the rectum, because a lot of people strain. Aloes is a laxative, so when people strain at the toilet, it can produce hemorrhoids, which comes from constipation, which may be coming from improper food combining or stress. Headaches. Well, for headaches, we go into the thyme, which is good for headaches, feverfew, which is good for headaches, which is enlisted. But just to calm the system, we use the catnip and the coltsfoot and the peppermint. Rhubarb is a laxative, so you wouldn't use that for headaches. You may want to use the rosemary with the feverfew. The rosemary with the feverfew for pain in the head. Or you would use the feverfew with something like St. John's wort. But you wouldn't necessarily use all these herbs because they're coming from different angles here. Some are coming for laxatives, some are calming the digestive tract, some is for mucus, some are calmatives. So I would suggest you just stick with your feverfew and your St. John's wort, or maybe some rosemary with the feverfew and St. John's wort, something of that sort. Hoarseness, marshmallow, licorice stick, slippery elm, golden seal, a few drops of lobelia, just a little bit of lobelia, not much. Wild cherry sticks or wild cherry tea, hyssop, horehound. That you can see we're back into the respiratory type herbs. The hyssop, horehound, mullein, coltsfoot, skunk cabbage are used for colds. Hemorrhaging, that just means bleeding. We want to shut it down. You could use a astringent like golden seal, or you can use some wild alum, which will stop the bleeding. You can use fleabane, but the ones that you can find readily would be the comfrey. The comfrey and the shepherd's purse will be ideal for that. Comfrey, shepherd's purse, white oak bark, witch hazel, which is another astringent. So if you want to get really astringent with this, you use the strongest one, the wild alum root, or you can use astringent teas like witch hazel, the comfrey, and the shepherd's purse. They are astringent, will help stop the bleeding. Head trouble, water to the head. We're using astringents like sage. We're using the diuretics, the juniper berries, kubi berries, or you can use rosemary in conjunction with it. Use rosemary, which increases constipation. You can only relieve that by getting rid of the waste, so a laxative would be ideal. Not a deodorant for the mouth like a mouthwash of some sort, but a laxative. High blood pressure. Popular in the South is hyssop. Hyssop, astragalus, blessed thistle, all those are used for high blood pressure. But the popular one is golden seal, not golden seal, the popular one is garlic and hawthorn berries and the hyssop. Valerian would just relax the person. If the pressure is caused by hypertension, then the relaxants are good, the valerian. And the skull cap is good for stress as well. But indigestion, again, we got the fermentation gas. Problem with digestion, so we're going right to the kitchen again, as I mentioned before, with your oregano, the marjoram, all those kind of herbs, the nutmeg, the cinnamon, all those are used for digestive problems. The marjoram, see, the nutmeg, all these you find in your kitchen to help do that digestive process. The bay leaves, the cayenne. But popular for that would be the golden seal. Lobelia is for the gas and fermentation. Wild cherry bark is for gas and fermentation. Bayberry bark is for gas and fermentation. That's food rotting in the digestive tract. So you may want to take a laxative and clean the food out. Influenza is a cold. And white pine is very popular probably in the South and in Europe. They use a lot of pycnogenol and tea tree oil, all those pine kind of trees. But you're back to the respiratory, the mucus, catarrh kind of things, the coltsfoot, the horehound, the pleurisy, the elecampane, the mullein, those type of herbs. Inflammations, That's anything that ends with an itis, vaginitis, appendicitis. You want anti-inflammatories. That would be cat's claw, and feverfew in that case. Cat's claw and feverfew, anti-inflammatories. Golden seal has anti-inflammatory effect. But to relieve the inflammation, they're trying to relax the tissue so to get rid of the waste, so they're using the hops or lobelia for that purpose. The slip around help to get rid of the waste in the system, which may be accumulating and causing the skin to get irritated and causing inflammation. So they go from a couple of different angles here with this combination. Insanity, mental illness, these are not the herbs, not today. They help increase the blood supply to the brain, relieve stress with the skull cap and the peppermint, and the sedative effect of the catnip. But you're looking at a severe illness here that may require better treatment than this, and these herbs here. Insect bites, years ago they used to use tobacco, but tobacco is kind of contaminated crop, so I wouldn't suggest you use that anymore. Fennel is good for insect bites. Skull cap, black soap even, for that matter. Echinacea, black cohosh, parsley, which is a diuretic. Sometimes you apply fennel directly to the area that gets rid of the pain from the bite. Intestines, trying to use some fenugreek or the chia seeds or those kind of seeds that produce a lot of mucus. That's why I said chia and fenugreek seeds, you see, and okra pod seeds. They produce mucus to help wash out the intestines. That's why fenugreek is here. Golden seal helps purify the skin. Mint is a calmative, relieves the stress and waste, helps relieve that waste out of the tissue by relaxing the tissue. Nettle is good for the skin. Pennyroyal has astringent effect. And the Solomon seal is good. And white alum is astringent. Cascara sagrada is a laxative. So we're trying to rush the food out and we're trying to slow it down with alum. I don't know which way they're trying to go with this formula. That's why I said generally the slippery elm, which helps slip the waste out, the fenugreek, the chia seeds will be good for that condition. Some people use Irish moss. Itch, buckthorn ointment or buckthorn oil is good for that. Yellow dock is good for itching. Poke root is good for itching, as well as chickweed. Ivy poison, we're trying to relieve the itching and discomfort of it all, so we're using a little lobelia, golden seal, myrrh, disinfect, echinacea, and bloodroot. Now we're down to liver problems, which we call jaundice. It's not really a problem with the liver. The liver is secreting bile to break down the waste. The waste is causing the problem, which causes the liver to react by secreting bile, making the skin look yellow, the fingernails look yellow, the eyes look yellow. We call that jaundice. So we use her specific for the liver, dandelion root, or we use the other herb, milk thistle, to go directly to the liver. But if you're not going directly to the liver, you can use bayberry, cleavers for the mucus congestion, the waste, sorrel, which is good for skin diseases, which means it helps purify the waste in the tissue. Sorrel is good for that. Sanicle, of course, thuja is good for that as well. Wormwood, which gets rid of the parasite, and it has an astringent type of quality, and it's alkalining, trying to alkaline the system, because when it's alkaline, it can secrete more waste. Chamomile to calm down the liver, and also is yellow and acts on the liver. Hyssop opens the pores to get rid of the waste in the tissue. Parsley helps to excrete the waste. Plantain is good for the skin, and henna is good for the skin as well. Stimulates the cells. And celandine, which is good for the skin, of course, chicory and fennel. We're trying to go over as many diseases as possible so you can get a feel for how to use these herbs. Eyes, we sometimes get inflamed. We use borage, which is good for milk as well, in which case you would probably use eyebright in conjunction with this. Eyebright in conjunction with rosemary. Eyebright in conjunction with golden seal. Eyebright in conjunction with sassafras. Eyebright in conjunction with yellow dock. You see, eyebright in conjunction with golden seal to treat eye conditions. Eczema is waste coming out the skin, so we're back to things that relieve the impurities and get the impurities out of the skin. The golden seal, the nettle is good for the skin. Of course, the Oregon grape works on the liver, helps get rid of the waste. The poke root is good for mucous membrane, which is waste, helps release the waste in the skin. Plantain is good for the skin, as well as yellow dock being good for the skin and liver. So we're back to getting rid of the waste before it gets to the skin and causes an irritating condition called eczema. Here we get into the waste of the tissue again. We get into the skin kind of herbs with the chickweed, the golden seal, the magnolia, the plantain, the echinacea. All these herbs are good for the skin. Smartweed, and you sprinkle a little slippery elm on it as well. Epilepsy, of course, is muscle kind of conditions, spasms. So we use antispasmodic kind of things like black cohosh, elder, mistletoe, Peruvian bark. Valerian is a relaxer, skullcap is a relaxer, lady slipper, another antispasmodic kind of herb. We use that for epilepsy. Fevers, we have a combination of herbs we can use here. We can use the catnip, the sage, the shepherd's perch, the sumac, the sweet balm, the tansy, the thyme. But fevers, the popular ones today is cat claw and feverfew, break fevers. But fever is a defense reaction. The body's really not a disease at all. We have the white cherry, the willow, white willow, the wintergreen, the wood sage, the wormwood, the calamus. All these are good for fevers. So we don't have to use all of them together. Sometimes you look at these herb books and you see all these herbs and try to figure out which ones to use. As I mentioned before, the cat's claw is popular, and the feverfew, which you can readily get. Flooding, which is basically relieved by bayberry bark tea, ginger, and cinnamon tea that checks the flooding. These are astringents, shepherd's purse, sage. We're back to using astringents again. Fainting, which can be due to dizziness, but we're trying to increase the oxygen supply to the brain and nervous system, so we use lavender to prevent fainting, or catnip, or peppermint, which are antispasmodics. Well, the female troubles in general, we use the herbs to help with the estrogen, the black and blue cohosh, the squaw vine. We're using those kind of herbs in this remedy here. But all around herb would be the red raspberry leaves. And we're back to indigestion, the nest seeds, the caraway seeds, the dill, the fennel. Most of the what you call seasonings are the ones used for digestion. Oregano, sage, peppermint, thyme, ginger, nutmeg, seasoning type herbs. Now we have the gallstones up here, and we're trying to get rid of them. A lot of people just use olive oil to get rid of the gallstones, or they use a laxative like cascara sagrada, or milkweed, or parsley, trying to urinate it out. Goder, of course, is swollen glands, so we use the gland, something really swelling of the glands, echinacea. And poke root are good for glands. White oak bark is astringent, good for the glands. Sometimes you apply it right topically on the skin. Gangrene is rotting of the skin itself, so we want to calm down the tissue, let it relax so more blood can get in it. So we use catnip, chamomile, those kind of herbs. Comfrey is good for healing all around. Myrrh is antiseptic, and echinacea is good for the skin and pores. Golden seal, smartweed, pleurisy, combined together in a hot fomentation that you put over the gangrene area. And for the throat, you can gargle with bayberry, you can gargle with ginger, hyssop, rock rose, sage, golden seal. Gravel is another word for stones, kidney stones. And we can use carrot, hyssop, marshmallow, apple tree bark, hydrangea, nettle, queen of the meadow, sorrel, help dissolve those stones. You could find parsley readily, and squavine readily, and bootshoe, and the hops, but of course you may not be able to find masterwort and ragwort too easily. Gout is usually caused and associated with arthritis. It's the impurities in the joints or muscle that cause the water to come to resolve the waste. So we use the burdock for that, the blue violet, the mugwort, the rue, but most popular ones will be the sarsaparilla, the devil's claw, cat's claw, or yucca, those type herbs for gouty arthritis. But just to get rid of the fluid retention, the ginger would be the tea for that. Gonorrhea is a type of a cold where you have mucus congestion of the reproductive system. Again, we're treating a cold, so we're back to the cleavers. We're back to the golden seal because we're treating a cold, it's just in a different location. QB berries are good for urinary tract infection along with uva ursi. So we're treating urinary tract as well. So we're combining a uva ursi with a golden seal, with probably a mullein or some kind of respiratory herb to treat that condition. Gleet, these are old names, you probably won't see them anymore. Gleet is mucus congestion, slimy discharge, a type of gonorrhea. We're using the diuretics, kubi berries, juniper berries, and we're using the wild alum to shut down the secretions that are coming out in this cold-like condition. And since it's in the urinary tract, we're using the saw palmetto, and we're using the red clover to purify the blood, echinacea for the glandular system, prickly ash for the skin and mucosal membrane, golden seal, and rock rose. Glandular organs, bittersweet, mullein, parsley, sea wrack. We have these seaweeds, the kelp and bladderwrack. This is another sea vegetable. Yellow dock, erica, poke root. Poke root is good for the glands anyway. Echinacea is good for the glands too. So you can use them as a poultice, or you can drink them as well. Gallbladder problems, we use golden seal, and we combine that with red clover, one of the docks, yellow dock, golden seal with dandelion in combination. Griping in the bowels now, we go into the digestive system again, and we're back to those digestive, what you call spices in your kitchen, nest, the caraway seeds, the ginger, the nutmeg, the thyme, the bay leaves, all that's good for griping and digestive problems. The prostate gland, we treat that today with palmetto berries and pygium. We don't use too much corn silk because that's a diuretic. We're trying to purify the condition. Buchu is a diuretic. Garlic is antibiotic, so you may want to use that. Golden seal also is antibiotic kind of effect, but we use primarily the saw palmetto berries and the pygium. Genitals, burning and itching, red raspberry leaves, marshmallow, slippery elm, pleurisy root. Now you don't have to use all of these herbs to relieve the itching. You would probably just use the marshmallow and the red raspberry. Chickweed is good for itching, measles, burning sensation. So I would say for the genitals, chickweed and the red raspberry. Okay, we're down to the kidneys now. We're going to use things for the kidneys. I mentioned the diuretic herbs. Most people have a kidney condition, usually try to get into these diuretics. The corn silk, the kubi berries, the yuba ursi. Those are diuretic kind of herbs. They're just going to increase the urination. They may not cure the condition. When you're getting into the condition, you may want to use something like a buck bean. Parsley is a diuretic again. Hemlock, wood sanicle, these type of herbs. Juniper berry is a diuretic. So most of these are diuretics when you're dealing with kidney type problems, which usually are relieved by the diuretic type herbs. Yuba ursi, the hydrangea, the holy thistle, the corn silk, the juniper berries. These are diuretics. So you probably would want to use those. The laxatives, of course, are for constipation and diarrhea. That's the rhubarb, the senna, as I mentioned before, the aloes. All those are good laxative type herbs, but you want to treat the condition, then you go to the golden seal and the mullein and the peach leaves. This is gripe or pulling sensation. You will relieve it. We use digestive type herbs, the peppermint, the sweet balm, the ginger. You're back into the kitchen with the sage and those kind of herbs you use as spices. But to get the waste out of the tissue, you're going into pleurisy, you're going into the golden seal, herbs of that sort. Lung condition, the same as respiratory conditions. We're back to using the respiratory herbs, the chickweed, the colt's foot. You see the mullein. You notice all these respiratory type herbs in this formulary here. Skunk cabbage. So if you want to get rid of the waste that's causing the condition, then you're into the golden seal again, and you're into the skunk cabbage or the yarrow. But to relieve those symptoms, sometimes you have to go into something like a relaxative type herb like the thyme. It's also good for pain as well. Lung fever, again, if you have fever, you want to use an anti-inflammatory like a cat's claw or a feverfew. Pleurisy is good for that, especially in the lungs. So you would use pleurisy and colt's foot. You wouldn't use all four of these. Lumbago or lame back, or we're using these astringent type herbs, shepherd's purse and yuba ursi, which the back problem may be caused by the kidneys, so we're trying to work on the kidneys. Lockjaw, which is a nervous condition, we use antispasmodics like lobelia and red pepper to speed up the circulation, to help get the waste out of the jaw or wherever the condition, the nervous spasm is occurring. Leprosy, which is a kind of skin disease which causes like a hardening of the skin, which decreases the muscles action and causes deformity in the body. It's mostly a skin disease that goes untreated. So we use the burdock to purify the blood, red clover to purify the blood, yellow dock. We use blood purifiers. The liver, to purify that, you will probably use the milk thistle. That's very good for the liver, or dandelion root. And these other herbs are good as well. The parsley is the diuretic, fennel, the woodbine, the chicory, the butternut, the lobelia, the milkweed. But primarily today we use the milk thistle and the dandelion root to treat the liver. Leucorrhea whites, that's referring to the women with their reproductive system. We carry the leucorrhea, which is the whites. Bayberry bark dush is used for that. Golden seal and myrrh dush is used for that as well. And sumac berries is used for that. Sometimes the ladies, when they increase their menstruation flow, they would use yarrow. You see, they can combine that with white lily if they like. But primarily for this leucorrhea, juniper berries and yuba ursi is used. I would say yuba ursi is the most popular one in conjunction with red raspberry leaves. Drinking habit, quassia. That's the most popular herb for that. Quassia is the most popular one. So I would just say quassia for the drinking habit, along with chickweed. Loss of speech can be associated with nerves, and it can be associated with mucus congestion. So you increase the blood supply to the brain, which helps wash out the waste. That's why rosemary is there. So you would use rosemary with golden seal. That would be a good combination. For measles, which is a skin disease in the mucosal membrane tissue, we use cleavers, pleurisy, valerian relaxes, yarrow cleanses. You wouldn't use all of these. I would say probably pleurisy, cleavers, and chickweed would do. Menstruation, to decrease the flow, you use these astringents. Shepherd's purse is the most popular one, while alum is popular, but I would say shepherd's purse and witch hazel along with red raspberry would be a good combination. Shepherd's purse, witch hazel, and red raspberry to decrease flow. To increase flow, we use the squalene, the fennel. These are kind of blood thinners too, you understand. And things that decrease the mucus waste from coming out of the tissue, like the coal, the herbs used for coal, horehound would be good for that. Mullein would be good for that. So to increase the flow, we use the squalene and catnip to relax the tissue to increase flow. So I say squalene and catnip would be good. Diseases of the mucosal membrane, that's the respiratory type herbs again, the coltsfoot, the hyssop, the red raspberry is good for that, the yarrow is good for that. So coltsfoot and golden seal would be a good combination. Nausea, you're back to your kitchen and the spices again with the oregano, the ginger. Just go to your spices and that will help relieve that condition. The anise, the peppermint. Nasal trouble, congestion of the nasal passage. We use black willow combined with saw palmetto berries and skullcap. Basically for the nasal passage, the popular one today is a bone set. Nosebleed, we use burdock seeds, but you can very readily get cuby berries and yuba ursi and peach leaves for that condition. Syphilis is a skin disease. If it regresses further, it goes into something that we call herpes these days. And these are the remedies for herpes and skin diseases. Burdock, prickly ash. You don't have to use all these herbs. Again, we're just purifying the blood with the burdock, and maybe we'll use some echinacea, and maybe we'll use a little white pine bark. But you don't have to use all. You can just use 3. The 3 you could use, it could be red clover, along with burdock. That gives you 2, and all you need is 1 more. I suggest just use the golden seal for its all-around purposes. Sprains, torn muscles, and ligaments, comfrey is the one you want to use for that condition. Sore throat, you can gargle. You can use ginger. That's very popular for sore throat. Sage, gargle with that and swallow that. Raw lemon juice is popular. But any one of these herbs would do. The fenugreek, which helps soothe the condition. Hyssop will open up the pores. The hops to relax the condition. The mullein to cleanse the skin that may be irritated. Release the impurities in the skin that may be irritating the throat. But again, you can go to your spices, the oregano, ginger, anise. All those are good for it. Now you want some sleep, you're going into these herbs, hops, the skullcap, the catnip, the chamomile, the peppermints, all those are good to relax with. Sores, those are mostly skin diseases, and we use the blood purifying type herbs that once again We use the pimpernel, we use the poke root, aloes, cayenne. Sometimes we apply the cayenne directly to the sore. Aloe can be applied to the sore, made into a poultice. Golden seal is all around good for that. So I would say probably the golden seal for someone who's not up to speed with the herbs. Just take the golden seal in conjunction with chickweed. Spasms, we use things that are calmative, the catnip, which is good for relaxing the tissue, the skunk cabbage, the wild yam, the red root, which is antispasmodic. And inflammations, remember the TIS, I told you the fever-few, the cat's claw, the anti-inflammatories, the black cohosh, the golden seal. Spleen, you store your blood there, and the spleen can get contaminated because the blood is dirty, so you go into some blood purifiers like dandelion root, golden seal, and yucca ursi. You can use the white oak bark again, fennel, hyssop. Snake bites, we're just trying to relieve the condition, so we use some black cohosh. Put some fennel on the bite itself, or some garlic, or some cayenne. Actually, will help relieve the condition. To drink, you would use echinacea. Probably echinacea and golden seal would be a good combination. Sore gums, a lot of people use golden seal and myrrh powder and put on their gums and gargle with it to relieve that condition. Golden seal powder, myrrh powder, good for that. Excessive desire and sex, people use these calmatives like hops, skullcap, calm the person's sexual desire down. But then a lot of people use the black willow and the lily root and star anise. This is redness of the skin, scarlatino. Just redness of the skin, we use rock rose. Scalds and burns, when you get scalded and burns, we use the skin type herbs. Some people apply the onions to the area, raw potatoes. Chickweed is always good for the skin. Stimulants, the cayenne is a good one. Speed stimulants would be ephedra. You don't want to use that to keep you up all night. So it acts like caffeine. The elder is good as a stimulant. Prickly ash, peppermint, and ginger. These are mild stimulants. Cloves and red sage. Now then, we have, which one we have there? That's the scrofola. Again, we're using some of these old terms that are not even used anymore. So that's a swelling of the lymph glands. Basically, it's glandular infections or swelling of the lymph glands, especially around the neck, scrofola. So we're dealing with glandular kind of conditions. We're back to using those mucosal membrane type herbs, the colt's foot, the cleavers. You see, we're back to those kind of things that release mucus congestion. But all around for scrofola, I would say the echinacea and the comfrey, and maybe gold burdock. Echinacea, comfrey, and burdock would be good for scrofola. Scurvy is usually vitamin C deficiency. So herbally we use for the skin, chickweed, cleavers, which are used for colds as well, and dandelion root to purify the blood, and hydrangea to get rid of this kind of condition, and nettle for the skin. Basically skin type things. This is sciatica, a nerve pain, that big nerve in your thigh. We use the burdock for that, and tansy. Smallpox is a skin disease, so we're using things that stimulate the liver to help the liver produce the bile, the substance to break down the waste, so we go to yarrow. We use red sage, we use raspberry leaves. To relieve the itching, mostly lemon juice is applied to that. In the old days it was tobacco. Before that, people would take a bath in baking soda to relieve itching. Scarlet fevers, things that reduce the fever, again, is the pleurisy root, the cat's claw, the fever-few. Cleavers is good for the respiratory system. Your thyroid gland, we use the glandular things like poke root. So I would say poke root and echinacea would be good for the thyroid gland. Testes, the testicle problems, we use the saw palmetto berries. Remember that, saw palmetto berries and posium. Always use that combination. You can combine that with mullein or chickweed. Typhoid fevers, we always use anti-inflammatory. Golden seal is one, cat's claw is another, fever-few is another. Itis, T-I-S, inflammation, cat's claw, fever-few for the inflammation again, along golden seal also. And echinacea is good for glands, so inflammation of the gland, we use echinacea with cat's claw or fever-few. And golden seal is always good as a blood purifier. Toothache, we usually use the sassafras oil or clove oil. Put it right on the tooth. Clove oil would be the most popular one. Tumors, we're into using, these days we use a lot of thuja and sanicle. There's sanicle and thuja. It's good for tumors and swelling of the glands, and swellings inside the tissue. So chickweed and coltsfoot are good for that. And as I mentioned before, thuja, sanicle, those type herbs. Sorrel is another one that's good for that. And of course tuberculosis, congestion, this type of a cold, we treat it the same way with the skunk cabbage. Antiseptic type herb like myrrh. Comfrey is good for cold. So we're using comfrey and skunk cabbage. Or comfrey and burdock root. Or comfrey, burdock root, coltsfoot. Coltsfoot's good for cold, so is horehound, so is elecampane. So we say, let's use some elecampane. Let's use some golden seal and comfrey and treat the tuberculosis that way. We mentioned the tobacco habit, the calamus, the magnolia, and I told you about the quassia. That's very popular for that. People get stressed out when they have a habit. That's why they have the skull cap there, and the peppermint, and the catnip, and the valerian to calm the person down. Get rather stressed when you're trying to break a habit. Now, in case for those who want to drop the milk, sage is the tea that will dry it up. Camphor you can apply to the breast and dry it up as well. Typhus, pleurisy, culver's root, bone set, that's getting rid of that mucus, congestion. You just went out all around tonic herbs in the Colombo. Basically, you go to your spice cabinet again and get yourself some coriander, marjoram, that sort of thing for the tonics. Make yourself a nice tonic tea and add those to red clover, and that'll be a good tonic. For prolapsed uterus, that means uterus is falling out of its position. You can use this for prolapsed uterus, prolapsed colon. We use the witch hazel, which is astringent, the white oak bark, which is astringent. So we use witch hazel and white oak bark. Combine that with a female type herb, red raspberry. Now scalding urine, again we're back to the peach leaves is good for that. And squabine and white willow, relieve that kind of discomfort. Uchu, kubi, juniper berries, the diuretic herbs are good. Ulcers, we're trying to heal that condition. So the popular one for ulcers would be aloe vera juice and comfrey actually. But all these herbs are good, but aloe vera juice would be good to drink and comfrey would be good, and chickweed. So I would just say the comfrey, if you have to rely on two things, the comfrey and golden seal. Varicose veins is waste in the veins, and we're trying to get it out, so you may want to use some white oak bark and witch hazel, which are astringents, to apply on the veins topically. But to get rid of that waste, you got to go back to the diet and back to maybe some horsetail combined with bayberry bark. Vaginal douche. Some people use the fennel and the marshmallow, but the very popular ones for vaginal douche would be the marshmallow and probably the uva ursi. But they also